Well, hello, my friends. Welcome. Today's a super special episode for me that you don't want to miss, and I'll tell you in a minute why. And with me, I have Drew Harris. He's joining me all the way from Malaysia. He's a Canadian artist, and we're going to have a great conversation that dates back to 2000. So don't miss it. It's going to be good.
Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, good morning, Drew. How are you? Actually, good evening for you. Good to see you.
Yes, hey, I'm great. Thank you, Sergio, and what an honor to talk to you. Such a time difference, too.
Exactly. Thank you. Well, first of all, I have to say that back in 2000, when I was an art student, I went to Chicago galleries, to look at the shows, and like I would used to every month, to see what was happening. And on a particular Friday, I walked into a Linden Gallery in Chicago, but this was the year 2000, so some 21 years ago. And I saw an exhibition by an artist named Drew Harris. The artist wasn't there, but I saw the paintings and I was just so touched by them, by the scale, the beauty of the work. It just felt like walking into a place that embraced me in some spiritual way, and I cannot explain it, but it was just created such an impression on me. As a student, I purchased the catalog of that show, and then I went home and I kept that catalog, in my studio for many years. So I think then there was another show a couple of years later, which I also went to see in Chicago, and time went by, right? This is 21 years ago. And then just recently, through Instagram, I get a little message from Drew Harris, and immediately it came to my head, like, Drew Harris is the artist, the person I know is Drew Harris. So I immediately was curious and looked at, the artist's profile on Instagram, and indeed was the Drew Harris. I had seen the work, but I had never met the artist back in 2000, and now we were having a conversation. And what a pleasure for me today, my friends, to have here with me Drew Harris, which is a great accomplished artist, has exhibited around the world, great success in his career, amazing work. It's full of beautiful stories of where his work has been all around the world, and it's more than an honor. You have no idea to have with me artist Drew Harris, now in the flesh, an artist that inspired me in my youth as I was becoming an artist myself, and that I had greatly admired for his work, and love the trajectory of his work. Now seeing the work that he's doing right now, super strong, super also continue to touch me in the same manner, and the focus that you have kept in the work. But we're gonna unpack a lot of all that stuff right now. So Drew, that was a little introduction to our friends. As you and I, we have now already chatted about this connection that goes back to 2000. That was an incredible show. So Drew, for our friends again who are just meeting you because of this little story, tell everyone again, how did you came to Malaysia?
Well,
you're a Canadian artist.
Sorry?
Because you're a Canadian artist.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you. The introduction, superb, my friend. That is the best I've heard in a long time. Introduction, and very kind of you. Yes, after the Chicago show. Well, actually, prior to that, I left a business partnership in about late '89 and early 1990, and decided to travel. So I took my son and my wife, and we went. We thought we would just travel for a month, and we traveled for about 4 years, and we ended up in, of all places, we ended up in Jakarta, Indonesia, and in Bali, Indonesia. And at the time, it seemed to be kind of the route everybody was taking, and we ended up there, and I developed a studio in Bali. From there, I did exhibitions in Jakarta, and I did a show in Melbourne, Australia. And upon my return to Bali, Indonesia, quite accidentally, I was approached by a dealer in Singapore, and the dealer had seen my work. He heard of me through whoever the person was, and purchased the work. And he brought it home to Singapore and had it framed. And he was then called upon to represent the country of Indonesia or Indonesian art
Oh wow.
at Tresors, which was the first art fair in Singapore.
Hmm.
And they happened to come to his gallery, his small little home gallery. They saw the work.
Hmm.
They were so enamored with this painting of mine, which I had sold to him for literally peanuts. Uh, he said, "Well, it's a Canadian artist. He's really not Indonesian," and they put it on the cover of the book for the Tresors art fair, and that really started the career with not only the Asian community, but with this particular rep. He then subsequently opened up a gallery here in Malaysia, uh, and at the time, contemporary art was really it was kind of new to this area of the world. There was a lot of traditional work, a lot of new younger artists coming out of the universities here, but there was really only a handful of abstract painters, and I happen to be one of the first foreign artists being invited here to a commercial gallery. So I did the first show, I think in 93 or 94, I think it was. And it was a tremendous success. And from that point, I sort of set my name here as a regular contributor, paintings and exhibitions and so forth. I was with that gallery for 17 years here in
Wow.
Malaysia. So this became my hub to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Where, and the funny part was when I did the 2000 and 2002 show in Chicago,
Hmm.
was when the financial crisis hit all of Asia. So I landed myself in a perfect position because I had work and I had two different markets. I had Canada and the US in a very heightened financial market, and I had the Asian market actually coming down and kind of settling during
Yeah.
the Asian crisis, the financial crisis. So I just took the work to back to Canada and to Chicago, which is where you saw it, and that was really how I started. So as I did the shows in Chicago, the Asian economy picked up. I was
Okay.
invited back to do another show. Long story short, many shows later, I happened to meet my wife at the front door of the gallery that I was being represented still, and we met, and of course, the rest is history.
That's amazing.
So
And
now I moved back here. I let Canada go, and I moved here, and I've been here for 15 years now, full time, in a loft studio in Kuala Lumpur.
very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And now, one of the also, I still remember very well. When I walked in that show in 2000, and was inspired by the work. And when I purchased the catalog and I was reading your story, I remember very clearly that it mentioned that you had come from a graphic design background. And the reason that was really important for me is because at the time I was studying both, painting and drawing, and also graphic design. And in fact, I was working as a graphic designer part-time, to help me pay for my education. So that also kind of really resonated with me because, like, oh wow, he's an artist who also has this graphic design background, but is doing this amazing, fine art work. And I could see in the work, the presence of the line, in your abstract, more expressive brushstrokes, but then there was always something that was very calculated, line, and that always kind of brought me back to your background in graphic design. So take us a little bit to how you uh, developed into from graphic design into your fine art practice.
Well, you're very observant in seeing that. Something you and I haven't actually talked about. So I'm impressed that you would see the both the capacity as graphics
Mhm,
or graphic design interest put
mhm,
into the paintings. The paintings, yeah, and still today, the paintings I'm working on actually today, in fact, are combine both. I've always felt that a completely painterly painting no matter who it is, I always want to find some landing point in a painting. And I find that in my own work, although you're working to the edge of a canvas, I sometimes use the bar that I'm incorporating as a landing point, as a structural landing point. It balances the painting. And I will add that as the last thing in the painting. Many times I'm flipping the painting around and I'm upside down and looking at it. And in some way it works, and then it tells me this is where it needs to be. And almost all the work, really, I don't feel is finished until this bar, this graphic bar or line comes into it. And I think I like the cleanliness of that. I like good, clean paintings. I'm not really a painter that, although I'm using abstraction and I'm using methodology of the painter, the really painterly painter, I want to sort of clean up sections of it. Where I find something messy in a painting that can't be resolved in that one section alone, I'll tend to sort of take a whole section of that painting and block it off. And it balances out the painting. It takes away the rough spot, the thing that I couldn't resolve perhaps in the painting. Yeah. It now becomes finished. It feels finished.
Right.
I also have a big interest in architecture. And as my work is collected, it's going into some fairly sizable homes, some well-designed homes. And I think, again, the clientele that are looking at my work tend to appreciate that composition or the clean structural parts of my painting. So that's really the way to explain it. And today, many hundreds of paintings later, it still is there, and it's still really a signature for me.
Yeah. And from what I have seen in your work, the line is usually vertical or horizontal. I've never seen one diagonal. Is there a particular reference to? It also reminds me of the kind of like the coordinates of how you look at a mapping.
Yeah, again, I've done paintings where I think, again, it's a linear thing. If you look at my studio and my life and the studios that I've had, both in Canada, my graphic design, in fact, there's a good example. As a corporate identity designer,
Yeah,
I was very structured. Anything that was too free flowing, or as you say, on a diagonal, was uncomfortable for me. I'm a box squared guy, like I just everything in my studios are never set up with a diagonal. I never have a diagonal.
Okay.
My computer, my monitor right here is completely level with my laptop. It doesn't sit on an angle. There's something about that just makes me, it's uncomfortable.
It's in your zone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I see everything very angularly, but straight and methodical.
And that's kind of what I see. The merge of the two. Your background, your understanding of design, and then painting, the structure of a painting, the physicality of a painting. Both working together, and I really enjoy that in your work. Now, as you became an artist, like were you I'm kind of trying to go back in time as you were a practicing graphic designer. How did you make that transition? Like, did you as you practiced graphic designer, were you also painting at home? Was that parallel to each other? Was one after the other? I'm really interested to know, how did you jump from one thing to the other?
Well, I could tell you a very funny story, but I'm not sure if I would have to get approval for this story. Although I can make it funny, and it is actually quite real.
Okay.
I didn't study painting. I studied graphic design, like yourself, and I studied sculpture and drawing. That was my two majors. These were my two majors. So I completed the graphic design. And of course, to jump right out of a college environment and then, expect to make money as a fine artist, particularly a sculptor that didn't have a studio, that didn't have materials, and who's going to buy drawings? That's my
Right.
drawings weren't that, you know, good at the time. And so I went into graphic design, and I spent years taking my graphic design and going into these, essentially Fortune 500 companies. So I was going into people like Toshiba, FedEx, and some of the banks and so forth. And I was presenting their corporate design work.
Okay.
And behind my presentation was always this fabulous art. And I was thinking, that's what I want to do someday. I really want to be a painter. And this is again a funny story, but my partner at the time was a painter.
Uh-huh.
And this is about this is probably in the late '80s,
Okay.
and she had when just prior to us
Uh-huh.
deciding to separate, she had actually bought me a canvas, uh, and I
Okay.
really had never painted before. So, but I had all this inspiration from my corporate guys.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought, well, I took a month off after we had kind of gone our separate ways, and I did a painting, and somebody bought it. And
Mhm.
it was just one of those things where, wow, I could do another one of those. And then I started to really research why I was wanting to paint. What was it? What was I needing to say in the painting? And the next thing you know, uh, I became a full-time painter in 1990. Really when I decided to sever the graphic design side and continue working on my painting. So I worked in my living room, and my corporate guys were still knocking on the door saying, well, you know, are you still doing design or painting? And I'm saying, well, I'm only doing painting. Well, let's see the paintings. So I would show the paintings, and that was how it really worked. And then as I traveled, that was the way I made money. For the 4 years or 3 or 4 years that we were traveling pretty extensively through around the globe, really. Um, I would set up little studios and do paintings on canvas, and oftentimes it was my means to sell to make a living as we traveled. So
Wow.
very fortunate, and now it's become
Yeah.
it is my career, it's my life. It's been this way for 30 some odd years now.
That,
So very fortunate
yeah.
to have had both.
Right. No, I love that story. Thank you for sharing. I think that is pretty cool. And I didn't I didn't know the back end of the story, so that is really
and
insightful.
and the young woman the young woman then is still one of my best friends today.
Okay.
We talk almost daily, so she's been an inspiration, and she was then. So I thank her for actually doing that.
Producing for that one canvas, right? That
One
got
thing
it.
is,
So,
uh,
and over the years, you have, of course, had many successes in your art career and have done a lot of work. Can you mention when it was some of the things that make you, the proudest moments in your careers thus far?
hardest moments.
No, some of the proudest
Okay.
moments or some of the
Oh, the
highlights,
proudest. Yes.
yeah, in your career.
Uh, well, there are many, and I'm blessed with this. One of them might be speaking to you right now. I mean, this is a moment where you think back and go, I got to speak with Sergio. Fantastic. But there are many moments. There are moments that it's hard to define one thing. There's been many kind of coincidences that happen when I'm showing work. I get to meet certain individuals. Uh, the exhibitions, the artists that I get to meet that come to my shows. Uh, I've met some of the greats here in Malaysia. Uh, I've shown with some of the top artists here in Malaysia. Uh, I'm in some of I'm very proud to say that my work is being picked up by the corporate market, the big hotels. And it's funny because my wife will travel for her business on occasion, and she goes to the hotels and the big, fancy hotels that have my work in it. I've never seen actually in the hotel, and she'll go in and take pictures.
What
She'll
I
search
found.
my work. So she goes, through Guangzhou and through and so that she gets to see my work in these places, and that makes me, I think,
Yeah.
very proud. You
Mhm.
know, I've had my opportunities to meet some very fantastic people in politics, in lifestyle, in painting. So there are many highs. You know, I've been had some good exhibitions with the greatest artists here in Canada. So I'm very blessed in that
Right.
regard.
Oh, that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
before the chat, before we went live, you were talking a little bit about also the business of art, right? When the work is done in the studio and now enters the marketplace, enters the world, there's a whole different dynamic, a whole different way of thinking and going about that. Do you feel like your graphic design career and working in the in that industry and all that experience in some way help you to be equipped to also manage that business side of your career when you became a painter?
Uh, you know, it's been invaluable. The and I think one of my, and I must say, one of the elements of success in my career was strictly because I had that business background.
Mm,
First of all, my ability to be able to speak to someone
mhm.
that is not in my industry, that knows nothing about art,
Right.
but I can present myself at
Mhm.
their level. So that was always an asset that I felt I had based on the history as a graphic designer. Um, I think my understanding of timing, you know, commitment is one of the things. I couldn't just tell a graphic project that I'd been working on, say, I need a few more days.
Right.
I had to meet deadlines. So deadlines are very important. And I'm quite. It's almost like my paintings. I'm very structured in the way I do things. So I set up an exhibition. I make the exhibition. I make it there. Uh, I make it on time. I do the best work I can. I prepare it the best I can. I ship it the best way. I can handle all of the business side of accounting through to just the sheer, you know, amount of work that goes out. I can manage that singularly on my own. Uh, I think that we need to do that as artists. We have to have our left and right brain thinking. We can't just simply sit and wait for someone else to do the
Right.
business side. You have to do the business side. I could do much better. I could do a lot better things, such as better websites or better social media. I could be on all the social platforms, but I would be spending hours a day uh, on that rather than painting. So I do what I can, and I think it's a I think every artist needs that. I've always recommended, you know, if you're going to become an artist, take a business course. Take a
Yeah.
business course. Learn how to do your taxes. Learn how to evaluate your work. Uh, you know, this market is it's a saturated and it's a very competitive market globally.
Right.
Just go on any Instagram feed and you can see that there are billions, it
Mhm.
seems, artists producing literally billions of pieces. There's a lot of there's a lot of viewing of these pieces, and you know, you just have to be able to get your work into the right hands. And a
Right.
lot of us just rely on, you know, well, let's hope someone sees my social media account. Uh, well, you can't do that. You have to you have to move in other directions. You have to go around all of that
Right.
to the source that you're trying to get into. Dealers, galleries, museums. Uh, you have to know how to write a proposal. That's another thing.
Right.
You know, we can't just say, "Hey, here's my work.
Exactly.
Give me a call." You know, you've got to write an official document and the way that they want to see it, not the way
Right.
you want to see it. So that's the kind of thing that I pulled from my business,
Mhm.
you know, background. But I'm guilty. I'm not always as business minded as I could be.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all always improve in different ways, and
That's it.
you have seen the art world and the whole world change from a time maybe when you started your career, it was before social media, when a time where maybe the galleries were a lot more involved in the work of the artist, and we do a lot more of that work now. Seem like galleries, because they're also now really busy. It's a different dynamic. They have all these art fairs. They have to travel, and so there's less time dedicated to specific artists. Now it's much wider. Also market, as you mentioned, and so now the artists, we need to take a lot more control of all these different parts, because the world today is more complex in all the different dynamics that happen, in the social media, in the web, in this physical world. So there's like these multiple levels of engagement. I think as artists now we need to have our hands on and be prepared to,
And I think, like you say, I mean, there are these multiple levels that we have to wear hats for each one of these. But I
right.
think that that's also, in this current day and age, each generation has its own challenges. But
Mhm.
today's generation, I mean, I'm quite impressed now if I'm dealing with a gallery, as opposed to say 30 or 40 years ago. If I'm dealing with a gallery today, there is there is across the board transparency. I can find my painting anywhere. If a painting goes missing because of somebody not doing their job,
Uh-huh.
I can find it. I will find it. I can find out. I can evaluate other works, other artists.
Right.
I can evaluate a gallery,
Right.
the directors. We're all so socially connected.
Hmm.
We, and I think that that's a good thing, because
Yeah.
40 years ago, a lot of it was based on a handshake and a trust thing, an email, or not even an email, a fax at that time, saying I'm sending 12 works to your gallery across the globe.
Of the globe,
And
yeah.
you were never sure whether you were actually ever going to see them again. And
Mhm.
in a lot of cases, the artists didn't see them again, and they got burned by, you know, low level dealers and all of that. And we've all had that experience. But today we can follow it.
Can track it.
We can track all our packages, where is that painting going, who's it's been sold to, where, oh, it's been sold second time. We know where it goes.
Hmm.
It's all transparent. I think that's a good thing about business today, social media particularly.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. And yeah, and the more reason for us as artists to be up on track on those things and get prepared for that, because we're not going back to how it used to be, right? It's always going to be moving, and it's going to be moving at a faster pace. And speaking about moving forward and so on, let's also touch base on the type of work that you're doing right now. Something that I also appreciate about a lot about your work, from when I saw it 2000 to when we reconnected again and started looking at your work again, particularly this series of the Peninsula Series. We'd love to hear more about. Is your consistency, throughout the years, and your level of devotion to the the vision that you have for the art that you want to create, um,
Yeah.
where you have really gone not rather than wider, but really in depth into this, and maturing into this. So tell us a little bit about this body of work, the Peninsula series, that will be seen a little bit here on the screen as we chat about it.
Sure. Yeah. This is a very exciting series for me, as and I'll get to it in a second. But to to give you a little chronological history of my work, I've always, I'm a Canadian artist. I spent a lot of my youth in rural Canada, so not within the cities until I went to school, into college and so forth. But primarily, I was kind of a farm kid, farming country, a lot of nature, and I think it was ingrained in me that nature and environment was so important, and it just felt natural to me. So my series work over the years, and as a graphic designer, again, here's the link. Uh, I'm talking about something that's environmental. My paintings, I started a series, back in, I don't know, 2000, or perhaps after the Chicago show. I started working much more environmentally. So I was tending to do my paintings as if we were looking from space into Earth.
Mhm.
And I remember at the time seeing these NASA images that were so high resolution of Earth. and they were just beautiful abstractions. And I started thinking, how could I work that series? So I did a series called the Fragile Earth series. I did a series which was, again, one of the reasons this Fragile Earth series was around was that I was trying to narrate the fact that we don't put lines on our Earth to divide you and I. So as a Canadian and as an American, as an example, we have the longest undivided border in the world. We don't need to have a line. Yes, someone's figured it out, but we don't have a physical line that you step over any parts of that. So, but the world has divided itself in that way. So I did these paintings very abstractly with multiple mediums, as if we were looking at the world in continents, and it was a stretch for me. So that, the show did very well, and that was the Fragile Earth series. And then I went and did a series called I did one which was the Doppler series, which was all based about radar and landscapes radar, very abstract. I did that show for Singapore, and it moved me into a show called The Weather Works, which, again, as a graphic designer and writer, I was thinking, okay, how do I twist it? The weather works. Well, the weather works, or it's the weather works. And that series actually started this whole ball rolling. And that I had done a commission for painting in KL, and I had gotten here to do the painting. It was a 12-foot by 12-foot painting for someone's kitchen, believe it or not. And I had done this 12 by 12 canvas, and I was so tired. And I decided I was going to just leave it out on the lawn for the sun to sort of bake it, set it. Well, and I went off to have a nap, and I came back, and the painting the rain had come and gone. It had literally had painted itself. And I thought, bingo, there's nature working in its best form ever. I put the paint down, it painted the painting. So I started, and I did the whole show that way. I left paintings out overnight in the dew on the lawn, so that the paintings, the little animals would track across it, and snails would go through it. And it was an amazing experiment into what came alive at night. Was fantastic. So that really was the start of this whole environmental. I was starting to think about things from nature. This series now, which has really only been developed in the last year since the world has really been locked down. I come from a peninsula in Canada called the Bruce Peninsula, just north of Toronto. A gorgeous piece of land, and I'm quite fond of it. A lot of my friends and family are there. And I live on a peninsula now here in Malaysia. It's Peninsular Malaysia. So I know now quite a lot about this country. Of course, I know a lot about that peninsula. So I was trying to mix the two. And the series really is kind of a reminiscent. I'm thinking about home. I'm thinking about the water of Georgian Bay, Lake Huron, just near where you are, Superior, and all our nature, our natural environments around these Great Lakes, and then into the Georgian Bay and stuff. So that the colors came from that. The natural blues and the turquoises came from that. And I, again, started to work with just mediums that felt that they were both Canada and here. We are bookended here with water. We have the Andaman Sea on one side, the China Sea on the other. So I'm, again, water is different here, but I'm trying to reflect the two. So in my titling of each of the works, although abstract, they're very specific to the Bruce Peninsula and then here. And I'm mixing the names so that, because again, through our British history here in Malaysia, some of the names that I grew up with, towns and villages where I grew up on the Bruce Peninsula, are actually here in Malaysia as well, from the the British occupation and so forth. So we have some connection there as well. So that's how it all comes about. And it really is, it's almost become landscape. And I've never considered myself really a visual landscape painter, but they've become softer, they've become gentler. And I think that's an exciting new direction for me.
Particularly the painting Searching for Satellites over Hope number 2, that totally has that landscape, aura of it, as you see.
And I'll tell you why. Again, the titling may not directly relate so much to the painting unless you know a little bit about, first of all, it's Searching for Satellites over Hope. People can read a lot into that.
Yeah.
But Hope is where I came from. Hope Bay is where I came from.
Okay.
So, and it's a natural ecosphere. It's one of the only Canadian natural ecospheres where you can, in Southern Ontario, I should say, where there are no unnatural lights. So cities don't have a glow in the sky. So you're seeing everything at its purest form in that ecosphere. So when you look up at night from Hope Bay, there's no external lights to cloud the sky.
Okay.
And you see satellites crossing over. And you can see them as clear as jets.
Wow.
It's quite amazing. And I remember just in my last visit home, lying there in the grass, looking up and thinking, look at that. Look at the satellites. That's unbelievable. And so this whole series now is my reminiscent of that. So
very exciting. Well, Drew, thank you so much. Just like in 2000, you have inspired me once again. I cannot wait to walk into my studio right after this conversation and get myself to work, because it's been such an inspiration talking to you. And as we close, if you could, impart one piece of advice to an emerging artist that may be watching right now this show and got inspired by your words, by your long career, by your work, and by your persistence as an artist, what would be just one quick piece of advice for that artist who's on the other side watching right now, maybe thinking, I don't know if this is going to work, or it's too hard, or whatever the mindset blocks may be going on right now?
Well, my advice to anyone is, young or old, new or in the mid-career or late career, don't be discouraged. Don't ever let a negative comment or even within ourselves, in our own mental state, saying we can't do it. No, there's no such word as that. We are all given sort of a God-given, talent. Each of us has some talent somewhere. It could be writing, painting, whichever. You will find your talent, and don't be discouraged by the lack of, progress. Every artist I know, young and old, successful, not successful, we've all had to go through these transitions where we think, I'm not good enough. And self-doubt. Eliminate the self-doubt. Be confident in what you do. The outside sources, your friends, your colleagues, they'll teach you a lot. Listen to what they say. Don't take it as discouraged comments. Take them as encouraging comments, because you're like all of us. We'll have 7 different careers in our lifetime, and you will have many forms in your artwork, and so really just learn from each piece and do it. And it can be discouraging, but and I know it well. Many artists do. You yourself, Sergio, probably have had days where nothing's working and you doubt yourself. Do not doubt yourself. That is my advice. No matter what, you've chosen to do it, do it.
Excellent. Well, and with that awesome piece of advice, we finished today's session. Thank you so much, Drew, for your time. It was a quite extended conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's late for you, so you're ready to go to bed, which that is awesome. And I want to invite all our friends who are watching or listening to the podcast to visit Drew Harris on his Instagram. You can find him at DrewHarris_paintings. You can also Google his name, and you'll find a lot of his work coming up on the Google search with Drew Harris paintings as well, or artists. and connect with him, let him know that you saw this episode or you heard this episode in the podcast. And once again, Drew, thank you for your time. We appreciate you. Hope to see you soon once again. And best of luck to you, to your wife, to your family, and to everyone in
Thank
Malaysia.
you.
Stay safe more than anything, and we hope to next time we connect in person, which will be really, really great.
Want to be. Hey, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. I followed you now for just recently I just found you and it was like, I have to follow this guy because he's going to reteach or teach me many things that I have either forgotten or never did in the first place.
But likewise.
And your work as well. Your work is fabulous. The center that you're working with, all your creative endeavors, best wishes. And yes, the last thing today, stay safe.
Stay safe, everyone.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.